Well, we're back. And by we, I mean you and me, right? Because it's really just me here talking to you. I mean, there's other people in the house, but you get what I'm saying. So here goes a question that came inside of my free Facebook group, Ask Jeff the Dog Trainer. And you can find that on Facebook if you just punch in Ask Jeff the Dog Trainer. Pretty simple. But anywho, it says something along these here lines. All right, give me 1 second. I'll pull it down so it doesn't look weird as I read it, or at least as least weird as it possibly can. Hi, everyone. New here. I have an 11-month-old Cane Corso. He's driving me bonkers. First off, I just want to say I'm sorry that's going on, but I 100% can relate to that. I know what it's like to not only have lived with crazy dogs in the past, but I live with them kind of all the time because we have an off-leash in 3 weeks program where we take dogs in and train them and then kind of send them back and go, okay, have fun. No, we work with the owners for 3 private sessions and then give them like a year's access to our Canine Connect 360 group to make sure they get the support they need. But it says he's been super good the last month or so. That's awesome. Tonight was a total 180. Uh-oh. Trying to bite and nip. Not listening at all. I have a vibrate collar as well as a muzzle that I couldn't find. And I'm at a loss. I want him to be a great family dog, and I know he can, but how do I break this? If I can't leave him with my kids, then I can't keep him. Help! Jeff, I did some of the tricks you suggested, and they're working great. Now, not at all. All right, so I'm not sure what tricks you tried. I don't know if you attended the master class recently or what exactly was going on there, but feel free to post in the group, or if you happen to be on the live now, let me know. Let me know, because I'd be happy to further assist you however I can here. But the Cane Corso thing, I've been dealing with those buggers for many, many moons, and I can tell you what, putting a Chihuahua with a kid that goes bonkers, most people could deal with that. But as that dog tends to get bigger, the problem gets bigger too if something were to go south. I can remember there is this story when I was in dog training school back in 2005, because I've been helping people for that long now when it comes to crazy dogs and not being able to get them to listen. And that's the number one thing people will say when they come to me is, Jeff, how do I get my dog to actually listen? So it's a very sad story, by the way, but anyhow, somebody had like the greatest dog in the world. And, you know, they always trusted this dog with the kids, and they were in another room cooking, and they came back in the room, dog was attacking the kid. They're like, what the heck? Because like they never thought that would happen. I mean, this was a mature dog, wasn't like a puppy or nothing, wasn't like, you know, they just got the dog, wasn't like they had it from a shelter. It was just like a really good dog that they never thought would do this. And then later, when they did the autopsy, what they found is there was like a pencil like lodged into the dog's brain. And so what had happened was apparently this dog was being very tolerant, you know, and it got to a certain point as the child was putting something in this dog's ear that then it all went to bad, real bad. So anyway, whenever you have dogs and children, leaving them alone with the kids is just always a bad idea. Just don't want to do that, especially with like a big dog, especially if it's like someone you love. Now, can you trust that? Sure. It's like trusting your kids to be at home with your gun safe. Totally. Or trusting them to be at home with knives in the drawer. Except the knives and the gun typically don't do anything unless the kids do. But sometimes dogs just make silly decisions, right? And it's one of those things that it's always hit or miss. So whenever it comes to giving advice here, disclaimer, full warning, is just like never leave dogs with children, or like dogs with the weak or disabled. If they can't handle themselves, if the dog were to go nuts, it's just not something we want to do. Same thing like if you have a tamed lion. Think of Siegfried and Roy, you know, like they worked with those animals quite a lot. And then I think it was Roy who got attacked perhaps, and he forgave that tiger, whatever it was. But the whole idea is animals have a mind of their own, just like people do, and people make mistakes, right? We make mistakes sometimes. We can be in a bad mood, upset, say the wrong thing. Heck, I might do that once or twice a day. So like it happens, right? And when it occurs, how big is the damage, right? If we have pretty good control of ourselves, maybe the worst that happens is, you know, we leave a snide remark. But if we don't have good control of ourselves, that's what could lead to actual imprisonment or fatality. So like definitely you want to have control of yourself and know that just like some people struggle to control themselves more than others, when a dog does that, that could spell trouble, right? And just like you probably wouldn't leave your kids with a stranger or someone that, is just like, hey, yeah, I don't really speak English, and but yeah, I'll watch your kid and somehow that'll work out great, and you really can't even communicate to them. That's what it's like when you don't really have good communication with your dog. Because usually when a dog's not listening, it's just a lack of clear communication or lack of knowing what to do to create the communication, right? Because it's two different things. On one hand, I could tell someone, hey, you need to be clear and concise when you communicate with your dog, but if they don't understand how to be clear and concise, I don't know what to do. And then even if they were thinking they were clear and concise, if the dog still chose not to listen, what do you do then? Oh, gosh, it's a tough one. All right, anyhow. But I've had a lot of people, believe it or not, with I can remember one recently, a Cane Corso had bit some lady's kid, and she wanted to try keeping it. And I said, absolutely, I'll help you however we can. And we definitely reduced the level of danger there quite a lot. But still, when I was walking away from that thing, I was kind of like, oh gosh, I hope they hire me for more sessions. And I don't know if I trust it yet. Like, I definitely wouldn't trust it. So what first step to all this madness is being able to trust your kids the best as you can. Again, so what doesn't occur like it did with that lady and her kids with the dog, where they did the thing with the pencil or crayon or whatever it was. And so you want to really make sure you can trust the kids. Now, I can remember there was a time I thought I could trust mine, and luckily one of my daughter's friends who was over ratted out my son. Thank goodness she did. And my son had the brilliant idea of, let's put cereal in a dog's ear. And the dog just happened to be a pit bull. Now, luckily the dog was very well trained. Nothing happened. The dog tolerated it, but same situation almost, right? So it's like, you never know. Now, in other situations, especially, and I don't want to pick on this breed by any means. It's just I happen to see this a lot, where someone will say, you know what, my dog does just fine, and then just bites out of nowhere. At least it feels like it. But usually it's been this underlying thing where someone really doesn't have a good handle on that dog and what's expected and what's allowed. And it usually goes south with the greetings. Number one way that thing goes south with just about every breed is the greetings. I can remember some of the first Corsos I worked with. I can remember going, wow, that's a timid breed. And I met the next one. I'm like, wow, same thing. And I just kept meeting them. And I met some that were absolutely 100% confident, but it seemed like in that puppy stage, there would come this point where they'd kind of back away and bark at the strangers coming in. And when you look them up in the breed book, it makes sense, leery of strangers. Okay, I get it. Because they certainly don't do that with all their family or the people they're living with, right? But I'll tell you this, they're more prone to it. Not that they all do it, but they're more prone to it than, let's say, another breed of, collie or something like that. And collies could, they're known for some good bites too. But again, if I had my pick, they're like, Jeff, you want to get bit by the collie right now or the Cane Corso? You have to choose one. I'd be like, collie, please, let me get bit by the collie. It's much, much better idea. So anyhow, when it comes to getting them to stop, first off is just making sure you have your tools available. So if you have a vibrate collar or a muzzle and you can't find them, get a backup, get something there to where when you need it, it's there. But then to that is you want to prevent these situations from happening, so you don't need to rely on that device in the moment, which would mean, okay, I know there's a chance my dog's gonna not listen, so let's put the leash, collar, muzzle on, whatever we're doing there before my dog's bad. So that way it's not like, oh, now my dog's bad, so now I have to go get this device, and then my dog associates, oh, the only reason I have to listen is because of that device. So absence of the device, I just don't listen. So we definitely don't want to create that. Now, as far as the super good last month and then the total 180, well, this is typical depending on age. So, at 11 months old, they're starting to reach maturity. And usually the bigger breeds or the more dominant breeds, or let's say the guard dog breeds, right? They're the ones that will typically show signs of maturity quicker. So they'll act like adults before, let's say, another dog, golden retriever or something. They'll typically act more so in that adult mentality. Now, for an adult, their mentality is, hey, we don't play. Come on. You'll see a lot of adults over 2 years old, where there's this like massive drop where they were, wanting to play with everyone, greet everyone, everyone's their friend, to all of a sudden, like some are their friends and some aren't. Some people are cool, some people they're barking at. Some people they'll allow to pet them, others they're like backing away. So that behavior then eventually leads to the growling and the actual lunging and the biting if we don't put a cap on it. Not to say that it would have to go there, just the odds of it are more increased. It's an increased likelihood that it would go there. So I suggest for everyone, control those greetings. Don't let your dog be in control. Think of it like this. Who controls the club when we used to go to clubs? Like, who would decide who could get in or out of that club? Usually there's like someone waiting there at the door. What do they call those? The bouncer. That's right. And so if someone did something that the bouncer didn't approve of, what would the bouncer do? Well, bounce you out. So we don't want our dogs to play the bouncer role, which can happen just as easily as by letting them be the first to greet whoever walks through the door or whoever comes up on a walk, or it just starts putting the dog in control. And what you want to do is take as much as that control out of your dog's mentality of them trying to control you and replace it with your dog listens to you happily and every time you ask. Now, if only they would actually do that, right? So the way you get them close or to that point, and the reason I say closer to that point is if you look at dogs that compete, they make mistakes too. A lot of them don't have perfect scores, okay, depending on which competition you're watching. And these people practice all the time, right? Okay, so if you're not getting paid to train your dog, or you have like no financial gain to win this competition, how much harder is it going to be for you to have a perfectly trained dog when the people that should have the perfectly trained dogs don't? It's because, dogs can make decisions. So at the end of the day, you have to decide, is this worth the risk? What's the risk to benefit ratio? And if the risk is, oh my gosh, this dog could really hurt my child, and the benefit is, well, I really would like to be able to leave them and trust them, I just might not do that till I can trust the kids to be able to actually prevent or interrupt or survive a Corso attack. Because again, it's not like getting bit by a Yorkie. I can remember several cases where people did end up putting their Corsos down, not because they weren't getting help, but in the process of dealing with an aggressive dog, if you don't do everything right, and even if you do, there's such a high risk of getting bit that if you're not a pro, and even the pros get bit, like for a lot of people, they just go, oh, okay, I got bit one too many times. Or, the dog was attacking me, I was okay with that, but now it's attacked my wife, or now it's attacked my child, so or my best friend, or whatever. So now dog must be put down. And I'm not here to judge anybody on the morality behind that decision. What I am here to tell you is there's absolutely help and hope. But again, you're back to risk, reward, benefit or ratios. So the way you build the trust is over time. But think of this. The people that get married when they met the first day, like they met and got married. The reason you don't hear about that a lot, at least not in America, is because we know people have a tendency to like put their best foot forward and then just kind of let you down. Now, for some people, they're experts at deception, and that's how people get caught up in abusive relationships, because they believe this person is so awesome, and then as they give more and more trust, that person starts to take more and more control. Then eventually they find themselves in a miserable situation. So what I'm getting at is the longer you know someone before you commit to someone, usually the less likely they are to flip the script and become somebody else. So when it comes to your dog, like same thing here, like the longer you can go without giving them the chance to let you down, the better off you'll be. Now, what do I mean by that? I've had people that are like, oh my gosh, Jeff, yes, let my puppy sleep with this little toy with the heart in it because, it absolutely has never damaged that toy once. And then, I'm like, cool. And then later they're like, oh yeah, it ate the heart out. Or, hey, Jeff, my dog totally can sleep with the bed in the kennel while it boards with you. No issues. The dog will totally not eat the bed. And then all of a sudden we're like, hey, dog's eating the bed. Like, what's up? And there's several factors that go into this. But back to them being super good and then not, well, it's kind of like humans too. Most humans that don't have a criminal record didn't have a criminal record until they first did, which means they were great model citizens up until that point. Maybe not, but at least they didn't have a record of being bad. And so for our dogs, it's like, yeah, they can be very good. And then out of nowhere, just flip the script and go bad. But usually it's like that maturity thing. Another thing I would look at is like, is your dog neutered? For a lot of people, they say don't neuter till 2 or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes if you're experiencing like a bout of aggression, a lot of vets will encourage it and say it's not a bad idea. Now, biting and nipping, hand in hand, but obviously there's a slight difference where when we look at a nip, we're thinking, oh, typically they're just playing or they don't know any better. When we look at bites, we're usually along the lines of this dog absolutely knows what it's doing and it needs to stop. Not good. So if it's more on the bite, like aggressive side, definitely get like help right away, work with a professional, like take care of this. This is not something you want to like chance, at least not in my experience, not with that breed. Now, if it was like, again, like a Yorkie and like no one was in severe dire need of help, it's like, yeah, worst that's going to happen. It might like take the edge of your finger maybe, or like, get you on the ankle real good. But like outside of that, we're not like super scared for someone. Now, if it's a baby, yes, we're more frightened, but for like a grown person, not as scary. But for a Corso, yes, even for like a grown adult, you got to really know what you're doing. So they don't recommend these dogs for like first time owners, of course. And for people that have had them in the past and that one did great and the other one did great, then they just end up with the one that's not great. And they're like at a loss because everything that worked with those dogs in the past are no longer working with the dog. And they're like, what the heck is wrong with the dog? And it's not that there's anything wrong with the dog necessarily, but what there is something wrong with is how we're communicating and the result of that communication. Now, what training is, this is basically brainwashing, right? We're just taking that brain and doing the same thing again and again until we start to inundate the dog with what we want from them and flood them with these concepts and ideas till eventually it becomes a reflex, so they don't have to think about how they're going to react. Because if it's just a reflex, the brain's doing it so quick, that's what saves them and gets them out of trouble. For instance, when most people call their dog come, their dog will pause for a sec, look around, and go, is this a good idea? But when you've trained them really well, you say, come, they come flying. They don't think about it. For a lot of dogs, you tell them sit and they'll look. You got a treat, and then they'll decide if they want to. But for dogs that are trained really well, you say sit, they just do it. It's a reflex. So what we want to create here to get our dogs to actually listen and be a great family dog is to create a reflex around the things you want. Now, for me, I'm a huge advocate of just don't let them do it. Like, don't even give them the opportunity to do it. So if it's like chasing the kids or like, trying to be nuts and like flying around the house, definitely leash to teach. Because if you use the leash to teach what you want your dog to learn, they learn it. If you go without the leash and you're like, hey, just do it, dog, and listen to me, it's really tough. Because if you tell them to do something and they don't and they're on the leash, well, at least you have some sort of control. If not, you have to go in there hands on, and that you're much more likely to get nipped. Now, if they're biting the leash, okay, cool. At least it's not you. I'm not saying it's great, but it's a step in the right direction. Now, a lot of people go, well, I don't want to leash my dog in the house. That's only for outside. Or, dude, no, I got this flexi lead. Okay, swap out the flexi lead, get a leash that you can actually use. It doesn't have to be huge. It just needs to be big enough that if your dog were to go cuckoo, you could get that dog in control again. Now, when you have that leash, the dog might totally not be in control. They might be bucking like a bronco and going nuts. But again, if you could just kind of ride that wave until they relax, you could have some slack in that leash so it's nice and loose and they're just choosing to be good. Bam, positive reinforcement time. But if we keep giving them the opportunity to go nuts and realize how fun that is and realize how little control we do have, all we're doing is just deepening that thought in their head that they could do what they want instead. So I want you to avoid that by not giving them the chance to do it in the first place and prepare. Know what time it is. Hey, is it at 7 o'clock? Is that the bewitching hour? When are they having the zoomies? Like, what's going on that's causing it? Next would be look at your routine. Has something shifted in the routine? Did somebody go back to work? Did somebody come stay that hasn't been there for a while? what happened that's different? Because oftentimes when this occurs, if it's not an age thing, it's usually a change in routine that causes that thing to happen. That's another one to really look at as well. Now, also it can be like an energy factor. So as our dogs get older, of course, like they start to build into their prime, and they can actually have like more energy instead of less, and need more to expend that energy. Because oftentimes when a dog's bad, it's because they're bored. So I would strongly consider getting a treadmill if you don't have one now, and then teaching your dog to run on the treadmill. Now, if you need help with treadmill training, feel free to reach out to me. We do have a dog I've taught beginning to end, and I show the whole process. I actually did it with several dogs, but we have one that I have inside of our members group, Canine Connect 360. You can find that at askjtdt.com/CC 360. And when you go there, right now there's actually a very cool special running on, so make sure you check that out. But inside of that, we have a section right for treadmill training, so you can learn how to get your dog running on that treadmill. In fact, I just did it for someone recently. They had 2 dogs, and same thing, we knocked it out in a day. We recorded that one too, and then when I went to turn the camera off, I realized the camera turned on, which meant we weren't recording. Whoops. But since then, we've done a pretty good job on checking and double checking to make sure we're actually recording when we press record. Whoops, did I do that for this video? I don't know. Live and learn. But that's why I give grace on dogs, because I make mistakes. I'm not perfect. So it's like, hey, I can't expect my dog to be perfect, especially if I'm not training them like I would need to create that kind of result. So just make sure, if you're struggling, having questions, visit the free group, Ask Jeff the Dog Trainer, post your questions, and I will answer you just like I'm doing with this video right here. Okay, boys and girls, have a good one. And again, just know I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you. I want you to succeed and win, but I'm also going to do my best to give you the exact dose of truth you need, so that you don't throw up on it, but you're starting to get the medicine you need to get this thing fixed. Because you know what? I'd love to tell you, yeah, you can trust that dog. You can trust that dog. You can trust that dog. But one thing I've learned from dogs is, like a lot of people, you really can't trust them. You could try, and I suggest you do it. It's a lot healthier than being untrustful. But at the end of the day, people can let you down, and so can dogs. And so again, you just want to make sure it's worth the risk